Question is, what do you have to say to U.S. farmers who feel that the deal is benefiting Argentina more than it is them, as
Look,
they are
Argentina's fighting for its life, young lady. You don't know anything about it. They're fighting for their life. Nothing's benefiting Argentina. They're fighting for their life. You understand what that means? They have no money. They have no anything. They're fighting so hard to survive. If I can help them survive in a free world, I happen to like the president of Argentina. I think he's trying to do the best he can. But don't make it sound like they're doing great. They are dying. All right? They're dying.
They're dying, and it's our responsibility to save them. That's why you elected me. Hello, David.
Hey, man. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing apparently better than Argentina is.
They're dying.
And it's true. In fact, Javier Milei's economic policies have caused a massive collapse in particularly manufacturing and increase in poverty and homelessness. And Trump likes that. He's fine with it as long as the commodities keep coming out of there for
Big
my
trouble.
buddies who are making trades on them.
Who could have guessed it? Who could have guessed that taking a chainsaw to the government might not work out? We might find out pretty soon. We are finding out in this country. Folks, we got a big one. We're going to be joined in just a little bit by Dan O'Sullivan to talk about mob capitalism. A really fun conversation. We talk a little bit about Al Capone, Arkansas, and much, much more. And we were able to sit down with two candidates for city council in Jersey City. We have links below for y'all to find out more, but stick around. It's very interesting. Two DSA endorsed candidates there. And we're also going to talk a bit about why the Trump economy is failing. These three reasons why it's going not good for the U.S. economy under Mr. Donald Trump. Bringing back the gem for that. And then in the postgame, patreon.com/leftreckoning, we'll be taking your questions. Matt and I will probably be talking a little bit more about the Graham Plattner stuff and much, much more. So you'll want to sign up.
Also be talking about this koala that saved a car from a landslide. So
Exciting
you're
stuff.
not going to want to miss that.
It's incredible what animals can do. It really is. Yeah, you're not gonna
Wildlife
wanna-
Lessons is my favorite new Facebook page. You'll never guess what it used to be, but we'll get out into all that in the post game.
No, it's going to be a lot of fun. So y'all aren't going to want to miss a second of it. But without further ado, Matt, I want to talk a little bit about the rally over the weekend, the No Kings rally. We got some clips we'll get to in a second. But first of all, I mean, I think everybody knows at this point. Unfortunately, I know this might date the episode a little bit, but it was massive. And it is just no small feat to mobilize that many people out on the streets. Now, would I prefer if the messaging was more explicitly class focused? Right? Sure. Do I think that reminding people about the damage and organizing people around the anti-democratic nature of the Trump administration in our current moment, it's a worthwhile thing to do? I do. Sorry. And do I think it's something that socialists should probably be at, recruiting and organizing and talking to folks? Absolutely. At the very least, probably not just totally deriding something like this. And I mean, we can maybe get into the weeds a little bit on it, Matt, but I'll just tell you like my general thought here. Do I think that this is going to be the thing that's going to save America? No. Do I think that a lot of the people maybe behind it and some of the larger organizing principles around it are even particularly good? No, but I also think a lot of people are going there are very kind of aren't going there because they're doing like they're deep members of some kind of organization or something like that. They're going there because they're saying, I'm very upset about what I'm seeing, and I want to go into a public space with other people and know that one, I'm not alone, two, that we have power. And the fact of the matter is, from Donald Trump posting that disgusting, frankly, video, that AI slop video that he did of him literally shitting on the millions of people who went out to protest, to Greg Abbott here, mobilizing the National Guard, acting as if people dressing up as, I don't know, frogs or velociraptors or whatever the hell people were dressing up as, was some kind of existential threat to his rule. Well, the fact is It is. They want people to be complacent. They want them to be beaten down. Now, our
And
role
to
as
stay home.
socialists, what
Like
they want, yeah,
and to stay home. Like this is genuinely embarrassing to the right that is trying to act like actually we would have won the popular vote in all these elections, except there's
yeah.
this massive voter fraud going on, and everyone secretly supports it except the evil Democrats in charge of the cities. They even want ICE and DHS and the feds in. They all love it. It's just a small number of people. It's actually not. It's not just Chicago and New York City. It's, I mean, the amount of people from small towns that
Yeah.
messaged me today on social media to say like, hey, don't forget us, is fucking awesome to me.
That's totally right. I mean, I remember watching some clips because obviously the one here was huge. I think it's the kind of like major media organizations are saying it's like 20,000 people here, which is pretty sizable in a city like Austin. But seeing some of the mobilizations in cities like Laredo or Bernie, all these other places across the state, it is meaningful. And I think that's a good thing to kind of highlight there too, Matt. It's very meaningful for folks who do feel kind of isolated. Now, look, am I somebody who is gung ho on these things? Is I somebody who's posting the links or tell people to attend these things? No, because it's not really what I think is going to get us out of this mess. But I just think that this is one of those things where people really should orient themselves to this historical and current moment that we're in, and asking themselves, where are the people, and how can we pull the people into the direction that is needed, that they need to be pulled to, in order to affect this kind of massive change. And I think that maybe we can pull up this Klippenstein video, because I think that his reporting on this in Madison was really great. Because again, look, I'm somebody who's made fun of these kind of mobilizations in the past, and I'm just seeing what we're going through right now, and seeing, frankly, the despair and the cynicism that you get from a lot of people on the left, to be something that we just can't abide anymore. Not that we need to become wear rose-colored glasses or anything like that, and not realize it's like, oh, these things aren't going to save the day or anything like that. But like, look, it's good to show up at the thing where there's a lot of folks curious about ways that they can get involved, and saying, here's how you get involved.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of this, has always been looking at mobilizations like Occupy, for instance, and say like, well, where can we make this better? It's never to say people should have figured that out before turning up to Zuccotti Park. So like that's not how it works. People aren't going to come to the right theory and then all of a sudden mobilize. I just think that's a silly way of expecting humanity to operate.
No, 100%. Well, let me put this Ken Klippenstein reporting up, because actually I really liked it. It moved me a lot. And obviously, shout out Ken. Y'all should be subscribing to the Substack if you aren't already. No Kings is about more than Trump. Americans are rejecting the national security state. Matt, can you note what this photo is here for folks who are listening?
Yeah, this is a No Kings protester with a sign that the top of it reads, "Are you NSPM 7 compliant?" NSPM 7 is the Trump basically directive calling anyone who is critical of, like, say, capitalism or the founding fathers in America, particularly the slave owner component of them, as anti-American and worthy of state investigation.
Clayton adds, while the major media focused on ties of potential violence that never materialized, the No Kings protest this weekend had another message. Millions of Americans reject the entire framework of the national security state. He talks about how he talked to protesters who were there complaining about the FBI's Homeland Security and the National Guard. Unlike the protests during Trump's first term, this one didn't see a savior in the FBI or even the Democratic Party, instead putting their faith in ordinary people like themselves. 7 million plus Americans gathered with homemade signs and costumes, rejecting the relentless threat mongering about some domestic terrorism enemy from within. We have these photographs here that Ken put up. He's talking to these women who are dressed up, who also noted like they're dressing up to make it very clear when they do see the violence, either from ICE or from like they had in Texas, the threat of like National Guard crackdown or something like that. They're like, what is it that they're so afraid of, right? And I think that's a powerful note here. I'll just play this video.
Footage before you play this of one of those frogs that's kind of gone viral, but of a fucking Fed or someone trying to spray pepper spray into the ventilation hole on the guy's costume.
I believe that was in Portland. Yeah, it's horrendous.
Yeah, and it's just insane. And what is tactically smart on the protesters is there is no interpretation you need to when you view that.
Yeah.
Nobody except a fascist thinks that is justified.
So let me just play this video because I thought this was very sweet. And again, people should subscribe to the Ken Klippenstein Substack.
We're Antifa.
And bees?
Yeah, we're bees.
Antifa bees?
Antifa bees, yeah.
Yeah.
Most people don't even know what that means, but we are definitely.
We don't
Wait for
even
it.
know what it means.
How do you guys feel about the Democratic opposition? Have they been effective at stopping Trump, or do you wish they'd do more? You're just laughing.
They're completely ineffective.
Their leadership needs to go with their
It's a joke. It's
Like Hakeem Jeffries and Schumer?
Jeffries and Schumer. Yeah. You take a lot of money
So
from
that's- Oh wait,
APAC. That's your first loss right
Yeah.
there. That's
Yeah.
then you can't lead the Democratic Party. So
so that's what was going on there, and I think that was a pretty good encapsulation of something that I heard from many folks who participated
Josh
in these
Shapiro
things.
went on the Breakfast Club last week. That's his name, right? Shapiro from Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
to talk about how that's an unfair shortcut to talk about. Who cares if this or that lobby
Yeah.
gives you money for your campaigns? We're trying to have conversations over here. Okay, we're just trying to have conversations, and it's like they somehow think that flies, as if like say when the was it Shell or BP, the BP oil spill was going on. If you took a bunch of money from BP, like the press would report that if they had you on to talk about what the reaction to the BP oil spill should be. And yet we've gone through 2 years of genocide, tens and tens of probably hundreds of thousands of Palestinians killed in Gaza. And you have politicians on to come talk about foreign policy like the money that they take from AIPAC or Democratic Majority for Israel isn't entirely corruptive of that and like makes them an interested party in the thing that we're actually like trying to stop. And so it's wild how to see that wave, it has crashed over them. It is not coming. The AIPAC stuff, the Israel stuff is here, and it is a problem for a frankly huge part of the Democratic Party, not just the two people on top of it, but especially those two. Because those two are two of the biggest supporters in Israel. And it's not a coincidence because they like to get that kind of money because it does signal openness on other issues. You look at Democrats that take Israel money like Kirsten Gillibrand. Guess what they're also open to? Cory Booker, cryptocurrency. Like the thing that actually like is a reason you don't have, or one of the reasons you don't have a Democrat senator in Ohio right now, Sherrod Brown, because of all the crypto spending against him. They can't stand up for things even when it's for the good of the entire party, and people understand that.
No, I think you're totally right. And like, on this, I mean, let me just, just note two things. It's like, okay, so here you're seeing people coming up and again, not venerating the FBI like we did see, in Trump 1, which was a problem. Because there was a kind of re-legitimizing project that the lot of these movements and the Democratic Party, many in the media, were trying to do about a system that a lot of people had lost faith in, right? Well, this is the kind of moment then where we really need to be there when you are seeing people organizing and showing up and just, hey, not even organized, just folks going there and saying, I am fed up with what is going on. I have lost faith in a lot of these institutions. I'm seeing how they're being gamed against me, against my family, against my community. You want to be there. 2, there is now a revolt against a political party that has abjectly failed to deliver for Democratic Party voters, for working class voters in this country. And people are questioning that and looking for an answer. And if they're looking for answers and they're kind of getting, I don't know, they're getting attacked by Trump with his shit and then, whatever it is going on online, not that I think they're seeing as much of that, that's an issue. And third, even beyond maybe the big aspirations, I'll tell y'all what, I mean, seeing what we're seeing with Trump and his willingness to try to designate American citizens as terrorists, there's no doubt in my mind that we are going to see a very serious attempt to start coming after people for their political opinions. I mean, we're already seeing it, obviously, to a certain extent. We've seen it for years with Gaza. I don't think it's out of the question that Trump, for example, tries to weaponize the Department of Justice or the IRS against organizations like DSA. right? We've already seen the crackdown on professors. We interviewed Tom Alter on this program, a professor who was fired for speaking at a socialism conference. That was something that the government of Texas played a role in pressuring the university to do. He got rehired and then fired again, right? And you know what happened? Everyday folks, people who weren't members of socialist organizations in Texas or in San Marcos, showed up because they said, this is wrong. We don't want to live through another Red Scare again. This is a moment where it is really important to kind of build those broad coalitions, because they're going to see where they can get folks, and they're going to see what they can get away with. And it's very important for our movement for justice, for working class people, and for, yes, democracy, to be out there publicly everywhere where we can be and saying, here's our critiques of the system. Here's what our plan is. How can we help? How can we participate? How can we get you to join our movements and organizations, right? This is the moment to get mobilized and to get organized. And, again, imperfect. Is this the flag that we'll be carrying, the No Kings or whatever? No, but that's where the people are. And they're not showing up to, our things at that level. So we should be figuring out how we can change that.
And I categorically reject what I think people have described as the pressure release valve theory, that the energy that goes toward these protests could go somewhere else more productive, if only. That's when people, I've seen somebody try to argue that out. And I'll just say, like, I remember when we talked with, what's the guy, was it Krugman, about the St. Louis general strike. And when they were winding that down, one of the first things that Uncle Sam told the strikers was no more parades. Stop doing that kind of mobilization. And I think I'll just say, like, from their perspective, I think that it worked in the 1870s.
They did the Veiled Prophet Parade. Remember, that was the
instead of it. Yes, exactly. And it is a show of force. People as a show of force, and democracy is not very well catered to by our electoral system right now. It can be influenced by democracy, of course. Like Zohran Mamdani winning the primary in New York City is an example of that. But it's also important to develop muscles for mobilization. And I do think, like, all of the looking back to Occupy, the critiques that were made of that about it needing maybe a more socialist political economic bent to it, sort of led to Bernie and the I think the power you see in the DSA right now. Like, I think that, and it wasn't because folks said Occupy was, too libertarian, and it was because of people engaging with it. And so I think that's just, where we have to be at.
People engage with it and saw its shortcomings, which I think is, part of politics, is recognizing that sometimes those lessons will have to be learned, like, in practice. And
just to reiterate the way I said it on Twitter, calling it the not like that left. You eventually have to build something that shows by doing instead of telling. You need to, and that's what DSA is doing. People might have criticisms about it's built something that is hugely formidable and exists in the real world that does by showing. And I think that's what needs to be done instead of doing by telling.
Well, there you go. Well, folks, we're going to jump over and talk about some folks, who did not always solve their problems with peaceful means. We're going to talk about mob capitalism with Dana Sullivan. And then we'll be right back after that. And we're going to talk about the 3 signs that show that the Trump economy is not working. Probably could be a longer list, but we'll keep it at 3. You're not going to miss it, folks. So enjoy this conversation, and we'll be right back.
Welcome, Left Reckoners. I'm Matt Leck. Joining me, as always, David Griscom. Hello, David.
Hey, man. Happy to be here.
And I am happy we are joined by Dan O'Sullivan. Dan is somebody whose work I've been following for a long time now. He's something of a 3-level scorer in the media world. He is he does great long-form journalism that, going all the way back to Deadspin up until recently. He's also great on tweets. He was the delete Uber hashtag founder, and he's also one of my favorite personalities to hear on podcasts and indeed get provoked on streams like the Go Off Kings. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today.
What an introduction. Thank you so much. That's you really went above and beyond on that one, Matt. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I'm a big fan of you guys as well.
It's great to have you. You have a new show now that I am a huge fan of. It's hit me at the right time. We'll get into this about Capone, but just to kind of introduce folks. And you call it a podcast, but I'll say people should watch the YouTube because particularly on the Cray Twins episode, I remember there being a visual element that was pretty important with some of the photos you have. But anyway, before we get into that, what is the podcast, The Outfit, about?
Yeah, thanks, man. The Outfit, I co-host it with my co-host, Alana Hope Levinson. And every week we tell a different story about organized crime and how it explains America and the world, really. My premise is that organized crime has really been underanalyzed as a way to explain the world we live in, whether it's the economy, our government, and all these aspects of life that are mystifying sometimes. And so my background, has been at least in part in writing about the mob. And so every week we tell a different mob story and sort of connect it with the broader significance. And whether that's the Cray twins in London, like you mentioned, or, Sammy the Bull Gravano, or the guy I wrote about, for years, Ken Edo, who was the only Japanese-American member of the Chicago mob. There's a lot to dig into with all of these. So it's been a lot of fun. And thank you for the kind words on that.
Let's start with the big guy himself, Al Capone. I don't know if you're a Thomas Pynchon fan, Dan, but in the new Shadow Ticket...
I saw the new movie.
The new movie's pretty good,
yeah,
but I'd be curious your take on the Shadow Ticket, the new novel from Pynchon, because Al Capone plays a role, and The Outfit is all over that. Let's talk about what was The Outfit? What was its relationship to capitalism?
Yeah, I heard that was in the new book. I haven't read it, but so look, the Outfit, probably most people have seen The Untouchables and they've seen that version of things, but The Outfit was literally what Capone referred to as that's my outfit. This was the criminal organization that he was sort of bequeathed, that he's the most famous boss of, and this is the mafia in Chicago for much of the 20th century leading into today. It still exists in a much diminished form. And we named our podcast after that in part because obviously we're fashion nuts and we love that. But also my feeling is, looking at the history of the Chicago Outfit and of the mafia in general, it's really the history of modern America. And that's an economic history, a political history. It seems to, if you look at what the Capone organization did in the decades after he left the scene too, I think you get an explanation of why America is like the way it is that usually gets excised from history books, economics textbooks, and so forth. And it's really about what David Chase said inspired him to make The Sopranos, right? He said it had two subjects, which was death and money. And that drive is perfectly embodied in the mafia, in the Chicago Outfit, without a lot of the niceties we see applied to other forms of business, other political niceties. So it's sort of the shadow history to me of America, and we do international episodes too that delve into it in other places as well. Obviously, it's a global phenomenon.
Capone, I'm interested. You mentioned he was a bookkeeper, right, in early life, and that's a line in Pynchon about like the Outfit's supernatural type bookkeeping. Am I misremembering that?
No. You're absolutely right. That one biography stated. I mean, and again, this is kind of interesting too, just to bring up, right? Like, the history is so contended over too. So one biography by a guy named Lawrence Bergreen says that he did work as a bookkeeper in Baltimore for a period, that he had a period of legitimacy. And then other biographers say that never happened, right? So we are we are still dealing with just the basic facts of his life in an interesting way. But what is undeniable is they were scrupulous bookkeepers to the penny, and for good reason, which is the name of the game is making money with these guys. And whether or not Capone kept his accounts himself, he did have a wonderful guy named Greasy Thumb Guzik, who was his bookkeeper. Jake Guzik, who died over his account books, which led to the mobsters dragging his large corpse home, telling his wife, "Your husband's dead," and he died in bed also. So business waits for no man, you know.
So Greasy Thumb Guzik is also in the Pynchon novel, and not to make this again sorry, David, I can tell David's already like, Matt's making this about Pynchon again. But Greasy Thumb Guzik is given credit for the Dawes Plan, which basically helps Nazi Germany rearm. I don't know if that's historically true, but that's a Pynchon invention.
You know, Jake Guzik did a lot of terrible things. I think was involved in brothels in his early days. I think even that would be going a bit far for him. He was also Jewish. So in fairness to Jake Guzik, I don't think we can put that at his doorstep. But a lot of bribery, a lot of that, you know.
I think it was Capone himself was asked about maybe the American way and socialism. Can you tell people about that story? I thought that was fascinating.
So this was an incident where a British journalist, who some of your listeners might know, Claude Cockburn, from the famous Cockburn family, Patrick Cockburn, a lot of journalists in that family, he went to the hotel in Chicago in the South Loop where Capone had his headquarters. I think this was, I forget the year exactly, it was 1929, 1930, somewhere around there. And it was for a London newspaper, and he interviewed Capone through a connection he had, which was Machine Gun Jack McGurn, who, as the name implies, was just a ruthless hitman, and interviews him. And it's this very funny interview where Capone, he really sounds like a kind of a Facebook commenter or something. You know, he's like, I run a racket along strictly American lines. I got no time for this pinko Bolshevik stuff. And I mean, look, this must have been music to Coburn's ears, being a, English socialist writer. But, he says essentially that, all the lies, I'm a self-made man, and, we got to, seize this opportunity by the reins, and every cliche you could think of. And there's also this weird thing that he keeps dipping his fingers in this little pool of rose water with rose petals floating in it, which is such a weird rich guy thing. I don't know what to make of that. But so, I talk about that in the first episode of The Outfit just because to me it's a perfect encapsulation. Like, I don't think he was joking to a degree that that's how he saw himself. And, is it that ridiculous that he's saying that? I don't know. I don't think so. I think he certainly has a case to make that he's either the worst form of capitalism or the purest. I'm not sure which.
Well, I mean, that's what I want to ask you about is like, how is the mob kind of like relating to like the system in Chicago and in the country at large? Like, because I feel like the kind of pop understanding of the mob, or maybe the kind of like basic lefty understanding of the mob, is that the mob kind of fills a space. So like, oh, people don't want to, like, there's a need for certain kinds of work to get done. Italians in particular aren't really like the first people to get these good jobs. Is that what it is? Is just kind of filling a role? Is it something that like, oh, there's a necessity to have a kind of, thuggish, violent arm, kind of like policing the poor and working class in these cities? I mean, what really is like the kind of hole or space that the mob is operating in the system?
So that's a great question. And I think to answer that, if you go back to Italy, the answer becomes interesting, right? Which is, how did and mafia is kind of a difficult term, but for shorthand, let's say mafia. How did the mafia actually form in southern Italy? and we go back, and you have to go back to the 19th century when Italy was formed into a state from these many smaller states, and ones that really, in many respects, could have been different countries, right? To the point that the languages are not mutually intelligible. So the Italian Risorgimento, right, the reordering of Italy into a state, it also meant that southern Italy, which remains the poorest part of Italy, is very difficult to govern. It's not well built up. Politically, it's a little bit of a nightmare. And the deal that gets worked out to this day, in many respects, is we will hand political power to certain people just to keep the peace there. And that's the deal, right? And you'll be my proconsul for Sicily or Calabria or these other places. And likewise, on the ground in Italy, you have these landowners who are absentee landowners who do not want to live in southern Italy or live in the cities. And they have these plantations, and they need people to take care of them for them. And this is where the mafia comes from, and the Cosa Nostra in Sicily. It comes from these guys who are really a state within a state, authority figures in areas that lack authority. And I think this is the best way to define a mafia. It's a shadow government. It's a state within a state. There are many things that the Cosa Nostra in Sicily in the 19th century does not share with the Chicago outfit in the 20th century. But to me, the most important thing they share, they are a shadow government. They are pulling the strings behind the scenes. The politics in Chicago at that time, obviously, are in many respects a byproduct of those machinations, not the other way around, right? Where, but incredibly dynamic. And again, going back to the 19th century in New York, in all these cities, there is a machine politics at work where you can see how Italian immigrants escaping that are going to find, well, this is just like home, So that's a long answer to that question, but I would say really they mimic the authority of a state, particularly in its ability to tax and to dole out violence.
I've been fascinated about this for a number of years. I remember we on the Majority Report, we had a caller from somewhere in the South, and they were talking. They basically said, like, the people in my circle and around me are basically all scammers. And I was sort of shocked by that, but also, like, we watch Sopranos, we see, like, this is sort of we call it the deep state as like but this is sort of deep private, right? Like a huge part of, there's a huge sort of submerged sector of illicit economic activity, that I think played a key role in, raising Trump's coalition up to one that could win. Am I overstating the size of this sort of thing?
No, I think it's a great point. And I think, I forget who said this, that, some journalist talking about how it always seems like New York or California or Illinois has the most corruption cases in the country. And their point is, no, they have the most journalists, right? So if you had a similar saturation of journalists in Alabama, and I'm sure they have, great journalists too, but it's just not as saturated with news. How many daily newspapers does New York have compared to, these news deserts? I absolutely don't believe for a second that, that these other places don't have this level of corruption. I mean, I look at, I look at a guy like Mike Johnson or whatever, and I'm like, what kind of dark skeletons does this guy have lurking in his closet? I mean, the Supreme Court is like one of the best examples right now of just absolutely obscene, naked corruption. On par with when the Chicago outfit was buying judgeships in Cook County. Up until the 80s, I should add. It really didn't get interrupted till then. The Federalist Society absolutely functions in a similar way to the downtown guys of the Chicago mob, making sure this guy got this judgeship, this guy got this job. So it's just how you frame it, but absolutely not, in my opinion.
Now I want to move to the Cray twins. I spent a summer in London. And
wait, just one quick thing before, if you don't mind, Matt. I want to ask Dan. Dan, do you know anything about Hot Springs, Arkansas?
I do, yeah.
I'll tell you, for folks who don't know, Hot Springs, Arkansas is a little town in Arkansas, and I went there just because I was passing through Arkansas. I had no idea about the connection.
Yeah.
And you drive through the main street, and there's just Al Capone shit everywhere, and I just couldn't believe it. But these guys, they love fucking hanging out in Hot Springs, Arkansas, right?
That's a city, and it's funny. There's a lot of towns that claim a connection with Al Capone that actually do not have one. Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan being my favorite. He never went there. But but Hot Springs, Arkansas is, in many respects, was the Las Vegas before Las Vegas existed, which is sort of lost to history. And maybe we'll talk about that later, that the mob is always looking for places they can migrate to where they will be absolutely able to control the political and law enforcement structure there. And Hot Springs, Arkansas was such a place. You could go party, gamble, meet women. And yeah, a guy named Oni Madden from New York, an Irish gangster, was retired there, was the big cheese there for a long time. So it's one of those colorful places that's sort of forgotten in American history. But I'm glad you had a good time. You know,
I did.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I've never heard of the first Las Vegas being in Arkansas.
Yeah, it was in Arkansas.
So let's, as I was saying, the Cray twins. I had a sociology teacher that taught me for like 4 weeks when I was doing a summer study abroad program, and he was obsessed with the Cray twins. He he sort of dressed like a gangster. He was a very funny guy. I was unaware that there was a incident with a guy named Lord Robert Boothby that pretty much, I mean, let me just step back. One of the reasons I like to read history is because I think people can catastrophize the present, and in a way that says like, oh, we're dealing with some sort of new type of evil. And I'll say that the Lord Boothby thing is just a British trial run of the Epstein affair, is it, like, basically, right?
Yes. I mean, this is, part of why we did an episode on the Cray twins and Boothby. So just to give some context, so the Cray twins are two of the spookiest gangsters you'll ever see. They are twins, Ronnie and Reggie. They look almost identical. They are these hulking guys in these dark black suits. And they were, London mob kingpins in the swinging 60s era of London, starting out as boxers and then moving into the nightlife scene and all this. And, part of what's interesting about them, Ronnie, who is the more psychotic of the two, was more or less openly gay. Reggie, bisexual, possibly, some very, incest, a lot of strange stuff going on with these two guys. But one of the things that Ronnie did was really, he was really a pederast. He really was a sexual abuser of young boys and men, and saw that, reading books about Al Capone, his hero, saw that a key to success was corrupting police, corrupting political elites. And one way he had to do that is he brushed up increasingly against high society in the West End of London, in these clubs they controlled, and in the East End of London at boxing matches, at parties where gay, wealthier men from the West End would go, was, if I put this stream of working class young men on offer to these wealthy, politically connected, closeted gay men or bisexual men in the West End, I not only have it in to the political establishment, I have blackmail material too. And that's where a guy like Bobby Boothby comes in, Lord Boothby, who is a very recognizable type of British politician. He's this rich guy who gets into politics, never really does anything of consequence, is always cash poor. He's kind of like Boris Johnson. He's just always stumbling into stuff. He's constantly having sexual affairs with people of both genders, and he's a big fat target. And so Ronnie Cray, sets him up, and then it's to the point that he has him so under control that he's having him intercede on his behalf in the House of Lords. Like, really astonishing stuff. So these connections really almost put the Crays above prosecution. They had a politician, at least one from each party in Parliament. And frankly, probably would have been untouchable were it not for the fact that they were so nuts that they were killing people in in public. So, the Epstein, there was just a thread this morning I saw that Senator Ron Wyden just expanding, the findings that he was giving about the relationship of J.P. Morgan to Jeffrey Epstein. And it's in the billions of dollars deposited with J.P. Morgan. So, Ronnie Cray sort of walked so that Jeffrey Epstein could run, I guess.
Yeah, and people should listen to the episode for the media element of it too, including payoffs to people who did proper payoffs elicited from publications that actually did proper journalism, but were like, sorry, we realized we shouldn't have published that.
Yeah, that's a really tragic aspect of it, that journalists nailed Boothby on these connections to the Crays and were forced to admit libel for publishing the truth because, of course, they got to the owners of the newspapers, which is, relevant today. I mean, it's obviously happening as we speak. So that was a dispiriting thing. And, once it's kind of a once bitten, twice shy type thing, because they did that. The other journalists backed off, and that meant at least 2 more people lost their lives who probably wouldn't have otherwise.
It's crazy because I will say the lecture series that I got on the Cray twins spent a lot of time on how they were treated like heads of state, basically, when they died, and just the pictures of the funeral and people lying in the street. It's unbelievable. When you say shadow government, like, people treat them like leaders of shadow governments. One final thing I want to, before we let you go, Dan, is Cuba. I've always been fascinated by Cuba, not just as ancillary to my, maybe indulgent interest in the JFK assassination, but what is the role of Cuba first pre-revolution and also with a lot of those mobsters, once again, playing a role? We always think of them as oppositional to the government, but playing a sort of like role or at least having discussions with our government.
Absolutely. So, David, you mentioned Hot Springs, Arkansas, right? And take this strategy of, dating back to Al Capone's predecessors. They called it the Roadhouse strategy, right? Well, if Chicago is a big city, it's a little hot, it has reformers in it. You go 10 miles outside of Chicago and set up a roadhouse where you can run women and booze and all this stuff. And it's a little town. You can pay off the 2 cops who live there, the mayor, whatever, and it's cheap. Hot Springs is an extension of that, and Cuba is an extension of that, right? It's a place we can go to where it's going to be friendly, it's going to be safe, we can buy off the local authorities, no problem, and really have our own things set up there. So pre-revolution, there are longstanding ties going back to Prohibition to rum running, right? Obviously, Cuba, a big source of illegal alcohol, and the rum runners would bring it to what they call Rum Row, where it'd be literally a line of ships outside the zone, and buyers could come up and pick up their booze and go back, and the Coast Guard just couldn't get them all. So those relationships forged during Prohibition lead after Prohibition to let's start setting up Cuba as a junket spot 90 miles off Florida, where we control the casinos. It's our thing. The government is not going to cause us any trouble because we own them. And none of these pesky authorities, none of these taxmen, it'll be our own thing. Obviously, Fidel Castro puts a crimp in that when he comes to power, arrests the mob boss from Tampa for a time, Traficante, and they're going to lose their investments on this, right? And I should add, the amount of Cuban disgust with these casinos and the junketeers coming into Cuba is considerable, and it plays a factor in the revolution in Cuba. These disgusting Americans coming there, abusing their women, right? I mean, it's really gross stuff. And so after that, obviously the not just the CIA, but the right wing, I should say, really in America, talking about how we lost China, now we lost Cuba, even though, of course, it's a little unclear at first if Castro's a communist. There's a lot of pressure from the right wing to do something about this. And the CIA and their brilliance, these Ivy League CIA agents, they get it in their head that the mafia might be a good ally in at least undermining and perhaps killing Castro. This is a typical harebrained scheme to me. But the mafia, and particularly the guys that they go to in this from the Chicago mob, what I find interesting about it is the mafia has a long history of fleecing the government when turned to for help. During World War II, they're tasked with helping protect some Navy yards in Brooklyn. They don't do anything. When they invade Sicily during World War II, every mafia chieftain in every village becomes the translator or has a relative become the translator for the American forces and British forces. It sets them up for great post-war success. Lucky Luciano gets out of prison on the basis of this and is deported to Italy. So they never really help him out, but they get a lot of credit. And so the guy that is the main guy who's approached for this is a guy named John Roselli, who's the Chicago outfit emissary to LA mostly. And he sees a great opportunity. I don't know if it's to get into Cuba. Maybe there's the hope there that that'll work out. But again, I think primarily to have blackmail material on the federal government, to have a chit that they can trade in for favors. And he enlists Sam Giancana in this. I don't think they actually, I am not sure, it's a matter of some contention how much they actually do. Whether there's a boomerang effect on what happens in Dallas in 1963 is maybe outside the scope of this. All I will say is that the best evidence I'm aware of for there being a conspiracy in Dallas that day is something that happened in front of everyone, happened on live television, and it's Chicago outfit associate Jack Ruby killing Oswald. Putting aside everything else, there was a lot of furious claims to dismiss Ruby's connections to organized crime. And I don't feel comfortable saying a lot about the JFK assassination other than being, this is my bailiwick kind of, that is hogwash. You look at Jack Ruby's pedigree, he was an outfit gangster. So make of that what you will.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I've always heard a lot of the things that the gangsters get cited as perhaps knowing that it was going to happen or something like that. And I never really know how much to credit that as just like gangster bravado versus, actually, Angleton told me that we're going to whack him on this day.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Dan Moldea, the journalist who he probably knows more about Jimmy Hoffa than anyone else. This is a serious guy. He says, he considers, Dallas 1963 to be a mafia hit. And, I think that there's actually some strong evidence for that. There's a plot that's almost totally forgotten from about a month earlier in Chicago, where it's identical to what happened in Dallas, but just that it's happening in Chicago. And so if that's true, which the Secret Service agent Abraham Bolden insists was true, then the Oswald thing doesn't make any sense, right? If the same plot was happening in the Chicago outfit stronghold. But I should probably stop talking about that before I,
you can
get whacked.
You can leave it to me from there. I always make an allusions to Abraham Bolden. People will say, like, Google the first Black Secret Serviceman and see what he had to say. Dan, the show can be seen on the Higher Ground YouTube channel and on anywhere podcasts are listened to. It's a great show. I can't recommend people go subscribe to it now enough. Is there anything else you want to say? Where should people follow you? As Sullyville.io?
Yeah, I'm at Sullyville.io. I'm on Blue Sky at O'Sullyville and on Instagram at the same. And it's been great doing the outfit with Headgum and Higher Ground, and you can watch all the YouTube episodes, find the episodes wherever they're found. So thanks so much for the kind words and for having me on to talk about it.
Thanks, Dan.
That was a lot of fun. I'm really happy to have him on the program.
I know. I'm a big fan of Dan.
No, it's always really sweet. Well, folks, we got a couple things. We got a lot still. In just a minute, we are going to bring back the gem, the Griscom Economic Minute. 3 reasons the Trump economy ain't doing so well. But we got to get a couple things set up there before we can launch that. So we're going to go over this conversation that I recorded recently with 2 candidates for city council in northern New Jersey, DSA endorsed candidates. A very exciting race that they have there. I hope that y'all enjoy that conversation. And then we'll come back and we'll do the gem. And then we're going to go to the post game. Patreon.com/leftreckoning to get access, where Matt and I are going to talk a little bit about the wonderful things that animals are doing, as well as talk a bit about more of this Graham Plattner stuff. So you aren't going to want to miss it. You're not going to want to hear. You are going to want to hear our unfiltered and unbossed thoughts over in the post game. So sign up and join us for that.
People might think, look, Matt, a koala saving a Kia from a mudslide isn't politics. And I would just say, like, if the animal kingdom starts coming to our aid, this climate change stuff becomes a lot more manageable. True. This is all political.
All right, so we'll be right back with the gem. But before that, let's get to this conversation about politics in the great state of New Jersey. Welcome, Left Reckoners. David Griscom here. I'm really excited to be talking about the politics in northern New Jersey. We have 2 for the price of 1, 2 guests who I'm really excited to talk to because they are running for city council. Could y'all introduce yourselves to the audience?
Sure. My name is Joel Brooks. I'm running for Jersey City Council Ward B.
Hey, I'm Jake Ephros. I'm running for Jersey City Council Ward D. Thanks so much for having us on, David.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm really happy to have you all on, and maybe, to introduce y'all a little bit, your politics. Y'all are both DSA members, right? And, are running a campaign here that's very much in line with the kind of politics that we're seeing, obviously, hopefully successfully coming up in New York with Zoran Mamdani's run there, but also with DSA as a whole. So the first question I want to ask y'all is, what is your relationship with DSA? Why does that matter to you? And specifically, why should that matter to voters in your area?
You want to go first?
Sure. We're both proud DSA members. Democratic Socialists of America is my political home. It's a political organization that really is the reason why I'm running in the first place. It's really important to us that, we're not just 2 candidates trying to get ourselves in city government, in local government, and try and pass some good laws. Obviously, we'll want to try and do that, but we think that it's critical that we build organization and build a movement to be able to win the transformations that we deserve as working class people. And it's only through mass organizations like DSA that we're actually going to win those transformative changes.
Yeah, I've been a DSA member since 2016. I joined during the first Bernie bump. And it's been my political home. I ran as a nationally DSA endorsed candidate in 2021 and kind of building the plane as we flew it. We lost by 185 votes, but built the organization in Jersey City, in Hudson County, in North New Jersey. The chapter went on to fight for and win a tenant's right to counsel in Jersey City. Jake was a leader in that campaign. Also, DSA statewide was a leader in the uncommitted campaign around the 2024 Democratic presidential primary. And am I skipping a year? No, I think those are two of the bigger things that our chapter has done. Our chapter has been doing a lot of great work.
And I want to get into this a little bit because I want to talk about y'all's policies and these kind of things. But I think for the rest of the audience, it's important to know that this has been a region of the country that has been very much involved in these major fights that we're seeing, from Palestinian liberation, the fight for human rights, to these very significant and important labor struggles. And I kind of want to talk about hear y'all's thoughts on how you're relating not just to DSA but also to these kind of larger social movements, because I think this is one of the things that's important for our political moment. I think it's something that maybe some of us were a little naive of, post first Bernie run, is that it's going to take a lot of people and a lot of folks and a lot of energy, and not just personalities to be able to get the things that we want done. So, how do y'all relate to these larger social movements in your region as you're running this campaign? And also, how do you view the office as a way to kind of aid and help those movements achieve victory?
Mine and Joel's personalities are going to take us a really long way there. Social movements will only have to do a tiny bit. No, it's exactly that we need to build up these movements and have candidates coming into office come from these movements, come from the labor movement, come from the immigration justice movement or the pro-Palestine ceasefire movement, right? We need to empower those movements to build them.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say, in my race, there are 7 candidates running, including me. But, I'm endorsed by National DSA, by our chapter, also the Working Families Party, the AFL-CIO, those are 2 big changes from my last run. And so Labor has gotten behind my campaign, also Jake's campaign. And so I remember someone said in 2021 that DSA got us almost there. But we need to win with a coalition. So that's kind of the way I'm approaching it this time around.
Well, let's talk about some of the policies that y'all are running on. And, this is kind of a unique situation, interviewing 2 candidates at the same time too. So when it comes to policies, is this some kind of, policy paper that y'all are operating off together? Do y'all have, differences? What are the main things that y'all are running on when you're talking to people, on the street, at their doors, et cetera?
So we have a joint communications and policy team that has been, telling us what to think and what does not. That has been advising us. And
your vessels.
Yes. No, really, shout out to our teams that are doing research, doing kind of white papers for us. So we have a team that is 90% volunteer, and stuff you see on social media, and any kind of comm stuff we do is from our team.
And the platform that we're running on is a shared platform of universal rent control, universal childcare, and safe, clean, green streets. So when we're passing out lit, whether it's in my district here in Jersey City Heights or in Joel's district, West Side, we're talking about the same basic issues. And, there's different neighborhood issues and different issues block by block, of course. But the quality of life for everything that we pay to live here in Jersey City and the cost of living crisis we're in, these are common things that everyone is facing. And so we have a really bold platform that we share.
Well, on this, and y'all can kind of pick this up as we go, but, I'm hearing the word universal a lot there. That's something that I think can get kind of contentious, particularly in progressive and liberal run cities. Can y'all talk about why you find kind of universal programs to be so important for democratic socialists to be fighting for today?
Yeah, I'll start. So Jersey City was the first municipality in New Jersey to have a $15 minimum wage as well as paid sick days. So both those went on to be passed at the state level. And so that's why we're leading with the universal part. The paid sick days law that was passed here in Jersey City was everyone. It wasn't just public employees. My day job, I'm a union rep and organizer for nurses and healthcare workers. And the law covered our nurses. Now, they already had sick time, but that sick time was then protected by the city ordinance. So getting a little in the weeds, but, we have a recent history in Jersey City of passing these universal reforms that benefit, the whole working class.
Yeah, it's also just practically important. So the political importance is we're all in this together, right? Every working person gets to share in the same victory and the same win. And we don't try and parse out some of the working class that makes, $70,000 a year or less, and another part of the working class that makes $90,000 or more, right? But then that's also just practically advantageous too, and easier to deal with at an administrative level. Like for a city government like ours, this small city, trying to spend all these resources and figuring out, okay, this person is now sending in their application so they can get rent control. Like it's a nightmare. And so it's administratively and politically more powerful to be able to just bring everyone in. Everyone gets public school, right? Everyone, no matter who you are, can get that same rent controlled apartment. Everyone, and this is what we won for the most part in 2023, everyone can get access to guaranteed legal defense in housing court through our new Jersey City Office of the Right to Counsel. So these kind of universal reforms are really politically potent.
Well, I mean, we'll probably only be able to focus on one today. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about housing, because this is something that I don't think that there's a city in the country that's not having serious questions about how we house people, right? How do we make our cities more affordable for working class people? So, why don't y'all kind of walk us through your plan for making your city more affordable for working class people, and specifically, what can be done on the municipal level to achieve these things?
Yeah. Universal rent control is the first part of our platform. And without digging too much into it, the current rent control laws on the books in Jersey City cover a fraction of tenants. That's for a few different reasons. One of the main ones is because you have to be a tenant in a building with 5 units or more. And so if you live in a building with, you, the landlord, and 2 other tenants, for argument's sake, you're not rent controlled. Unfortunately, on top of that, landlords have been taking historically rent controlled buildings, huge old buildings, 20 units and up, right? They chop them up into LLCs and condos and then legally take them out from under the rent control law, because now it's no longer a 5 and up building. So universal rent control is the easiest way, again, to just bring everyone into the same kind of equal protection under the law against egregious rent hikes. Now there's some work that we got to do at the state level to make sure we fully expand universal rent control, but a lot can be done right here at the city.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So part of the reason I decided to run was because I was a rent control tenant and I was getting hosed. It's a family podcast, so I'll use that word. Hosed by my landlord and being illegally overcharged. And just like, this is, anecdata, but came in with an illegally high rent, filed a petition that took a year to get an answer from the city. Got the answer I was being overcharged. Told my landlord. They kept charging me the illegal rent plus late fees. And this was just a saga that went on for 4 years. There's an organizing component to this too, in terms of reaching out to tenants and educating them on what their rights are. And shout out to Jersey City Tenants Union, who's doing some of that work in Jersey City. But it's just, there's just so many barriers even now with the existing rent control ordinance that we do have. So I think one difference, and doubling back on a question earlier in terms of like what's the difference for voters, is that Jake and I are going to be boots on the ground organizers, and not just like, hey, you got a problem, I'll get back to you in 3 days or a week or never. So we're going to be out there organizing and making sure people maximize their rights and take collective action. Yep.
Well, thank you both for coming on the program. We love to hear that. How can people keep up with the campaign and get involved if they're interested?
We have a campaign office right here. You can walk on in and start canvassing anytime. But
someone from Birmingham, Alabama did that.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
No, really, we are always looking for volunteers. So Jake for JC or Joel for JC.com/volunteer. You can volunteer. You can look at our Instagram pages to follow along with all the updates and the news from our campaigns. And if people are in a position to contribute anything, again, we can share a donate link that actually goes to both of us.
Yeah.
That is so helpful to help fuel this last stretch of the campaigns we're running.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And before we let you go, I mean, what's the timeline for elections and all that?
20 days. So yeah,
right,
people are voting by mail now.
Yeah,
that's part of what we're focusing on. Then people can vote early, October 25th, and then E-Day, Election Day, is November 4th.
All right, folks, we heard it here. Well, thank you both so much, and best of luck in the campaign.
Thank you so much, Cameron. Really appreciate the time.
Thanks, David.
Definitely an interesting campaign. It's always good to see more socials running for city office. So there's links below for people to check it out, keep up with it. How you doing, Matt?
Good. We love our organizers, folks, don't we?
We do. That's making me think of the big boy himself. Shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
All right, we're bringing back the gem. Real heads know is the Griscom Economic Minute, which is very rarely a minute, but we're going to get into Look, Trump promised a lot, and I think it's undoubtable that one of the messages in his campaign that was very effective, and it should have been easily parried by any kind of competent left-wing economic populist message from the Democratic Party. It's not surprising why they weren't interested in doing that, because it would mean confronting their failures and their donor class. But one of the major things that Trump ran on was affordability. Things in America cost too much, and people's wages have not kept up with inflation. Hell, we haven't seen a minimum wage increase in this country since George W. Bush, which is insane to think about. But
That's
now,
crazy, man.
Now it's Trump world. It's Trump economy. And a lot of the focus has been on the tariffs and all of the kind of crises that he's doing at the federal level. No doubt that creates a lot of issues. But I wanted to point us towards 3 signs that show that the Trump economy might be cooked. So, first one here, lower income Americans are missing car payments. And this is a very, very big and major hit. So this is one of those things where across this country, you are forced to have a vehicle. In many cities, it's very difficult, very expensive to get around without one. Almost impossible in certain parts of the country. It's also something that is a kind of long-term commitment, and is something that, I don't know, might be a kind of like reach or a level up situation. If you're somebody who's maybe struggling, you feel like you have a little bit more stable income, you might reach and say, hey, I'm going to get myself a reliable vehicle instead of the old beater that I've been driving, or the bicycle that I've been on. Problem is that when you start to see other parts of your income get squeezed, hell, you might even lose your job, you lose the kind of certainty that you have, those payments become more and more difficult to make. Now, add in the fact the entire predatory industry, particularly in the era of very, very cheap credit, of saddling people with car loans that went on for 6 years to pay off a vehicle, right? Very, very high interest rates. So people are paying for their car 2, sometimes in the worst case, I've even seen 3 times as much as the actual market value of their vehicle, right? Anyway, This is a major sign that things are not well in the economy, and it also is showing that this is one of the last things that people do, because like one of the most humiliating experiences you could ever have is having the repo guys show up in front of your house, in front of your neighbors, and repossess your vehicle, right? This is something that people do as a last resort, which means people are feeling less and less, confident in their ability to make these kind of things. The share of subprime auto loans is from the New York Times. The share of subprime auto loans that were 60 days or more past due reached a high of nearly 6.5% in January and has lingered near that level. Repossessions have swelled. More drivers are trading in vehicles that are worth less than they owe, and lenders such as CarMax and Ally Financial have warned investors about auto loan performance. Despite stubborn inflation and punishing tariffs, the U.S. economy on its surface has appeared to hold up relatively well. The stock market continues to climb. Company executives, for the most part, remain upbeat, and consumers overall are still spending. We'll get into some of the issues there in a second. But I mean, this is one of those things that we're seeing more and more pressure, more and more people getting squeezed. And this is just one of those kind of early signals that things are not well in the U.S. economy. Now, this is the other one. And these are connected. Growing number of Americans are facing the prospect of long-term unemployment. This is from CBS News. According to Labor Department data, in August, nearly 2 million people in the United States face long-term unemployment, defined as being out of work for at least 27 weeks. That's the highest number since 2022 during the pandemic. The primary reason we're seeing long-term unemployment getting worse is because of economic uncertainty coming out of the White House. Now, let's also add to this worrying fact that Trump and the geniuses in his administration have been waging war on the BLS, right? Making it even more difficult for them to be able to get the information and do the kind of full analysis that we need. Meaning that particularly these kind of things, right, like long-term unemployment, are probably being underreported, right? And I want to be very clear here, because I think a lot of times people besmirch the folks at BLS. I mean, the government data that we get, for the most part, the people working there provide very, very high quality and detailed information. And Trump has been waging a war against them because he doesn't like what it is, that they have been reporting.
There's a paper or a piece this morning in the Washington Post. Trump says inflation is dead. Most data is that the one I read? There's one that goes into the specific way they're just going to fudge these sorts of things by are changing the start dates. Like we're gonna project out this way instead of that way because it's smarter. That sort of stuff.
No, I mean, at a certain point, like they can paint whatever picture they want, and the fact is that like if Trump and his boys are happy, they're making money, right? That's probably all that they want at the end of the day. They are trying to, hide the fundamental reality that most people are feeling if you talk to folks. And this is probably too zoomed out for people to see, but that is long-term unemployment. But if you look to the far right, that is where Trump becomes the president. And I think I zoomed it in here a little bit more. That's where Trump becomes president, and we're seeing a significant uptick in that. So these are just early warning signs of what's going on now. Now, and this is number 3, right? So we have auto loan. Number 2, long-term unemployment is up. And 3 is debt. And it's going to get way worse than you think. So this is the total debt balance in the United States. It might be a little fuzzy for y'all there, but on the far left, it's 2004 all the way to 2024. The red is non-housing debt, and the blue is housing debt. Housing tends to be the largest amount of debt for obvious reasons. But if you see there, Matt, is that going the direction that you would want something like that to go? At a moment where people are feeling squeezed, where people think that we might be facing a recession because of, I don't know, the global trade war that Trump has engaged us all in. Do you want to see that going up or down?
Yeah, it's nice when you're worried about the cost of groceries to also be falling massively behind on your debt payments.
We got this spirit box that says that is a chart for a Panikin. Matt and I are card-carrying members of the Panikin party. This is from the New York Fed. Mortgage rate balances grew by $131 billion, but let's get to the big one here. Credit card balances rose by $27 billion from the previous quarter and stood at $1.21 trillion It does not say that here, but that is a record. So we have now reached record levels of credit card debt in the United States of America at a time, again, where we're seeing long-term unemployment growing. And we are also seeing businesses, a lot of them are less willing to hire. They're holding off on making major decisions, certainly holding off on doing things like giving people raises and things like that. So what does that mean for somebody like most Americans who are just living paycheck to paycheck? They start relying on credit to be able to bridge the gap, to pay for expenses, to pay for things like their kid's birthday party, and all these kind of things that, hopefully in a functioning U.S. economy, and the greatest, the largest economy, wealthiest country in the world, would be just something that would be expected as part of life. But in this country, not only do we not get that because of the greed of the capitalist class, we also have a whole list of host of predators ready to jump in here. This gets into something outside of the credit card debt, which is a new thing, a new fun thing that we get to experience in this country, new debt opportunities. This is from the New York Times as well. Consumers are financing their groceries. What does it say about the economy? Increased use of buy now, pay later loans may signal shifting consumer habits, but could also be a troubling sign of financial stress. I'm sure most of y'all have seen these. You get ads for them. Hey, you want to get a pizza? You can put it on credit, right? And for many people who are struggling, it seems like a reasonable offer. Obviously, these things, they're charging rates like 27%. Some of these companies I've seen in interest on these purchases. The fact that people are paying for this, not just for like reach items or special things or trip or something like that, but just the things that you need to live, is exceptionally worrying. That doesn't look like a functioning economy to me. Buy now, pay later tracker, 41% of users late in the past year, more using loans for groceries. That's from Matt Schultz and Dan Shepard.
I like it. I like the hypothesis that this is just changing consumer habits. As if anybody would want to put groceries on the credit card.
Yeah. We're not even
unless
on the
it was
credit
like
card.
for like
We're on like extreme interest rate too. You know what I'm saying? Like, no,
right,
like your point stands,
yes.
but like these are like
yeah.
even like more extreme than just putting on the credit card.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
An increasing percentage of buy now, pay later users pay late. 41% of buy now, pay later users say they paid late in the past year. Nearly 1 in 4 buy now, pay later users say they have had 3 or more active buy now, pay later loans at once. More users are buying groceries with buy now, pay later. 25% of BNLP users say they've used the loans to buy groceries. That's up from just 14% a year ago. 2/3 of these users say they consider using it for food delivery, and many are putting their money where their mouth is. DoorDash and Buy Now Pay Later. Klarna announced a partnership that allows customers to pay for DoorDash using Buy Now Pay Later. More users see Buy Now Pay Later as a bridge to their next paycheck. We just got into that. More than 6 in 10 users incorrectly believe that making on-time payments on Buy Now Pay Later loans will help their credit score. So 3 signs that the Trump economy is not doing so hot. But don't worry. The president of these United States of America is hard at work. Matt, I don't know if you saw, but he's doing something that will help all Americans in their time of need. He's been tearing down the White House to build himself a new fancy ballroom for him and his rich friends, to laugh at the fact that they're screwing all over the rest of us while they're sitting pretty and living high on the hog.
You know, I have seen a little bit of that. I did appreciate Bernie foreign policy advisor Matt Duss's response to it, which is that he would like to see liberals be a little bit more comfortable remodeling, which is to say, like, actually like exercising power. Like this whole thing of like maintaining this stuff. The problem is it's being done by crooks. Right, like the whole economy stuff right now, I can't get over like the lack of rationale we have for this. The closest we have is Howard Lutnick. Is he a Commerce Secretary? Yes. Who former like hedge fund investment guy slash Rumble owner, but now the Commerce Secretary, and he went on Fox Business talking about how the whole point of these tariffs is it's going to bring factories on shore, and it's going to be robots that work in the factories. And it's like he had no rationale for how this is going to help working people in America facing, like you say, like a cliff, right? Like and I'm glad actually Jeff Stein of, I believe, Washington Post, who's writing a book on Bernie, pointed out that Bernie added a new line to his stump speech, which is about unemployment caused by things like AI and technology. And it is absolutely going to be a defining thing, just like housing has been. I think that sort of unemployment is going to be a defining feature of the next, half decade plus.
These are serious times, folks. So it's time to get involved and get organized. And
capitalism can't do it. Yeah, capitalism will not employ people.
There's no solution for you under the current system.
Yeah, absolutely not.
We need democratic and radical solutions, and that's why you should join organizations like the DSA. Let's say, folks, we've had a lot of fun, and it's not over. Matt and I are going to talk a little bit more about this Graham Plattner thing. I know some of y'all probably heard enough about it, but we'll respond to some of the most recent news. We've talked about it a bunch on our Sunday show, and we'll talk about it a little bit more here. But most importantly, we're going to be looking into Mother Nature and what's going on with the animals, because it's some pretty exciting stuff.
A walrus did something too, David, fresh off the wire. So
wait,
just getting pretty real.
How do we catch that? If you wanted to watch this other part of the show, the post game, Matt,
patreon.com/leftreckoning, where you can support our endeavors at the low 2000 first Trump administration pre-inflation shock price of $5 a month.
That's true. So we have a separate link just for our patrons, and they get to watch the whole main show ad-free, no interruptions, and they get the post game all one stream. So for the folks who are over here watching us on Twitch, if you're watching us on the free version of this program, you're going to want to switch over at patreon.com/leftreckoning. If you're a patron and you're already watching on the free side, jump over to the patron only side so you'll get it uninterrupted. We're just going to play music for a minute or so to say goodbye to all the freeloaders, and then we will be sitting at the table with the elites and the powerful in the smoke-filled room that is the post game. You want to join? You want to be a part of it? Come and support us on that other side.